Good morning to you two out there in YouTube land. Right now, today is Sunday. It is February 9th, and I'm sitting here at 6:30 in the morning. I'm still a little tired, still got bags under my eyes, but it was enough to get up and start the day. And for me, starting the day is going to be doing this video. The rest of the house is now waking up around me. Hopefully, I can do this without being interrupted or having to pause, but that's just what I got to deal with, so don't worry about that. Today we are doing another Dresden Files book. It is Jim Butcher, Proven Guilty. Again, I am a fan of this series. I'm loving it so far. I will read all of them, um, and I will tell you about it as I do. Um, you've probably already heard this before. If you're seeing this one, you might have seen some of the other videos, but it is what it is. And a shout out today to one of the people out there. He goes by the name of @JeremyDay4892. He reached out to me listening to one of my prior Dresden Files reviews, and he said he's enjoying it. So, hey, this one's for you, buddy. Hope you enjoy Proven Guilty. And like I said, I mentioned this in a lot of the previous book reviews for Dresden Files as well. I'm reading that entire series. The books, the short stories, the graphic novels, even these microfiction that's out there. I'm going to absorb every piece of them. Okay? And I have a reading list, and it puts all of the stories and everything in a chronological order. So, and for instance, I just ran into a great example I can share with you here. And it's kind of necessary and good for this novel. So I read the latest graphic novel in order, and it was called War Cry. Okay, it was a 5-issue comic book series done by Dynamite Comics, and it takes place in the continuity between the last novel, Deadbeat, and this current novel, Proven Guilty. And why it fits nicely between these two stories is that Harry had just become a warden at the end of Deadbeat. And because the ranks of the wardens have been depleted, sorry, have been depleted due, due to mass kill-offs from their war between the White Council and the Red Court of Vampires. And the story takes place where Harry Dresden is trying to train the next batch of wardens that are coming up through the ranks. And it also acts as an introduction to what they call the Venatori. Okay, this is a group that fights the old ones, of which Warcry gives us a representation of. And among the Venatori, there's a subgroup called the Venatori Umborum, and that acts kind of like a public cover for their activities. They do ally with the White Court, and they can be non-combatant at times. But they do offer aid for the White Council against the Red Court. So that short story kind of fit pretty well reading these one after another in the series. Now, one thing I've always liked about reading these, by the way, is see, I'm usually worried about bridging between story A and story B, or book 5 and book 6 and whatever else. And it's got to be a challenge for Jim Butcher, the author, to keep things fresh in that aspect of his writings. And what I'm talking about here is, and I'll give an example, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, you don't have to be a fan or even know about it to get my point here, but just indulge me for a couple minutes. Okay, so Marvel had made their movies come out in a certain order. Okay, and they were built to grow the franchise and grow into something larger. And from their point of view, they call everything a phase. Okay, and in the first phase, they wanted to make a movie about the Avengers, a group of like 6 or 7 heroes together with one story. And for the sake of time, they felt it better to introduce each hero in their own individual wholly starred movie on their own before we get them together. Okay, then you can kind of see their backstory, you can see their origin, you can see what their main hangups are or who their villains are in their edge of the world. Okay, so they made individual movies for like Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, the Hulk, all that kind of stuff. And then by bringing them together into one Avengers movie, you're not wasting 20 minutes or a half hour on each character's origin story. You can go right into the meat and bones of the why we're all together kind of a thing. So by doing the individuals, you get all the little nuances and foibles of each character, and now together you can see how their personalities either connect or clash. Okay. And after the first one, the first Avengers movie was a success, they started having more come out. And then they kind of, melded it into what we'll call the saga of the glowy things. Okay. You make a few combined Avengers movies, you add some new standalone movies, you get to introduce to an Ant-Man, a Captain Marvel, and Guardians of the Galaxy, etc. And then 23 movies later, you got the big bad two-part glowy thing movie, and it's like there you have it. They do Infinity War, Endgame, boom. It's all over. Okay. And unfortunately, it kind of truly ends there because they had never set up a following storyline. There was never another baddie in the wings that they can now make the next problem. Okay, so they have to go back to the beginning. They've got to start things from scratch because there weren't any seeds planted for another saga while they're working through the current saga. You know, Kind of like, if they were going along their little adventure and be like, well, listen, we have no time for that right now. Let's put a pin in it. We'll come back to it later on. We'll take care of this one first and then, priorities. Okay. So they got to start all over again and try to create things from scratch all over again to duplicate their success. And spoiler alert, it's not working too well. So you could say, Joe, what the hell has all this nerd fest got to do with this? Well, my answer is being able to continue the story. Okay. Being able to go to the next step without the need to go retcon a baddie and start all over again from zero. And just in case you might not be familiar, to retcon is to retroactively continuity a storyline. For example, if you watch the Aliens franchise, they came out with Prometheus. Okay, that was kind of an origin to those alien xenomorphs, where they come from. It was a prequel to put things more into perspective. Star Wars, they made Rogue One, and that kind of answers the question: why did the Death Star from the original first movie have a flaw that was so blatant that was able to blow up a whole space station sized globe? you know. Best one about that one though, that retcon, the little Easter egg though, because they used this squadron of X-wing fighters, the blue squad, um, and it gets all wiped out. And the excellent part of that Easter egg of the retcon was the fact that they couldn't use a blue squadron when they made the original Star Wars because they used blue screens for their effects. So therefore, if they had a blue squadron, it wouldn't translate well, blue on blue. So they turned it into, I think, Gold Squadron or something like that. Therefore, gold will show up because blue wouldn't. It was fantastic to see that kind of thing. And as far as retconning is concerned, don't forget basically every Saw movie that happens between like the fourth one and the 14th one or something like that. And that's why I praise Jim Butcher, because when he starts this out, it's literally at the tail end of the battle against the necromancers in the last book, Deadbeat. So he's literally just continuing the saga with its next, I'll assume, logical step. Therefore, onto this book. Now, usually when we read the installments of these, we get You get a small little action-packed opener, the introduction. Usually at the tail end of some small encounter, and it's taking place in media res, and you get to see the stalwart Harry Dresden in action. But here, we start with an execution. The White Council does not abide the use of black magic. They think it corrupts and it will just wreak havoc and cause a huge problem, so they're just totally against it. And in this intro, they execute a 16-year-old kid with all ceremony, pomp, and circumstance, and just say, this is how our law works. And as a warden, Harry has to be there. And the White Council had chose to do all this in Harry's backyard in Chicago. That one's awake. So, two reasons. One, so the White Council is serious and you can, see evidence of this. And two, it's an indirect warning to Harry, okay? Because A, Harry is kind of touched with some dark magic himself. And they're just looking to knock him down and possibly out forever if it ever manifests itself. And also, due to recent events with the Red Court, the White Council believes that they have a traitor amongst themselves. Okay, and it's possible in their eyes that Harry is this traitor. So it's the threat. Showing him this execution is a threat too, because they find out it's him, he's a goner. And in the intro as well, everything gets set up for us as far as like the roadmap of everything Harry has to be concerned about. The Venatori are mentioned, and they're fouling up the Red Court's support system, their supply chain, if you will. They're slowing them down, which is great because, we just met them in the graphic novel Warcry just before reading this one, so we're kind of like getting the pieces to work together very well. We're also reminded that the Red Court of Vampires does use humans to assist them. Therefore, the things that can stop a vampire, the humans can just walk right past. And these outsiders have actually gone to attack the White Council, even when they try to escape an encounter between the White Council and the Red Court of Vampires. And they're able to enter the realm of Fae, which sometimes the White Council will use as an escape route to get out of a battle. And that means that they're actually having another battle in the realm of Fae. And by doing so, the outsiders, kind of pissed off the Fae by using their realm as a battleground. Now, we know from the history of the realm is called the Never Never that the Fae inhabit. There's two courts separated, into two primary factions, which is the Summer Court and the Winter Court. And the Summer Court has decided to take some retribution against the Red Court of Vampires for involving the realm. So they're aiding the White Council as much as possible. However, they're not getting into too much battles because they're always afraid that the Winter Court will come after them when they're distracted or they're weak. So while they'll assist the White Council against the Red Court, they're not going to battle. So we get to see what they're doing with the whole war, so to speak. But, however, the Winter Court has not gotten involved. Enter Harry Dresden. Okay, he's got to go to the Fae and figure out what's up, Winter Court. And the realm of the Winter Court in Fae and the Never Never, typically not very nice to Harry. When he gets there, it's just, he has a godmother that's in the Winter Court, and doesn't go well for him usually. So that's a interesting plot point they have there. So all of this, what's going on, has to fall onto Harry because the war's taken its toll on the intelligence gathering abilities of the White Council. So at least that's the reason why Harry's charged with his task. Which is always, again, with plot points, always great from a reading standpoint. And then to top it all off, as Harry's leaving this ritual execution, he has a talk with his old and now untrusted mentor, Ebenezer McCoy. At the end of their chat, Ebenezer gives Harry a note from someone called the Gatekeeper. And in the letter, the Gatekeeper tasks Harry to look into Chicago because there's been repeated acts of black magic. And even though they just got over a doozy of a black magic war in the last book, Deadbeat, something is still happening often enough that warrants some attention. So Harry's got another task on his plate. And there you have it. The story just progressed right after Deadbeat, right into proven guilty. Very fluid, very logical, and it continues the saga of this Red Court Vampires White Council war in a very concise and logical, effective manner. So right there, it's not the glowy thing story all over again. It's not we have to go back to the beginning and talk about villains that have always been there we've never seen before. It's just a smooth sailing progression of the next installment, which dovetails nicely with where we were at the end of the last big adventure. So, Excelsior! Sorry. Moving along. As Harry gets away from this scene, our hero gets completely sideswiped on the street. Literally. You know, his beat up old VW Beetle is smacked by another car, run up on the sidewalk, smacks into a building, completely totaled. And we already know that people are out to get him. And we know that there's going to be new baddies in this story. But there's the known people that want to get him, and now we have the new unknown people that are trying to get him. And as he slowly recovers from a probable concussion and makes his way home, he needs to lock in on his goals and try to find, who's trying to make him a target and how he can check off this whole to-do list he just got, in the introduction. I gotta stop saying, I don't know why I do. I just gotta stop doing that. So in the time between these last two novels, Harry has set up in his basement / lair / conjuring room this model replica of Chicago. Okay. And he hopes with some spells to be able to lock in exactly where in the city something's happened. If he has the best thread that he can magic up to get him there, and he uses Bob, which is pretty much his spirit Alexa, and gets ready to make a spell to magic up whatever his quarry is. And this is where Jim Butcher's flair for the details in this urban fantasy truly come alive. There's a detailed account of what ritual magic means. It can be very dangerous, and it requires long periods of sustained focus. Can't let those random thoughts and worries pop in your mind while you're trying to concentrate on one specific magical task. To do this, ritual magic, Harry has to go through a cleansing ritual. And he's got to make his body ready. He has to collect talismans to focus on the 5 essences of the world: fire, water, earth, air, and spirit. And there's descriptions of what he's going to use and how it connects to the element. It's a very good read. It truly is. And then he has to make other preparations too, to engage the other senses of the body. He'll burn incense. He has grapes. He might have a piece of fabric that's like sandpaper on one side, but felt on the other. Somehow there's an opal affixed to a mirror, and he has a tuning fork. So it's the intention to these kind of details that enwrap me into this world, because there's always a note for an explanation of why these specific things. It's not just we need ingredients for a potion. It's you need these ingredients because they're pertinent to the spell in this manner. And then it's the spiritual forces that you may want to invoke or aid, you're using these specific items in order to entice it to come forth. To come forth and assist you. Just classic. Absolutely. So now we get along down to the story. Okay. They pick up a thread here that's been lingering in the background of this series for a while. So there was an event 3 books ago that has been plaguing Harry for some time now. At the end of Death Masks, okay, Harry Dresden has picked up one of these 30 pieces of denarii silver that was given to Judas Iscariot when he betrayed Jesus Christ. Okay, and each of these pieces of silver has been imbued with one of the fallen. These are fallen angels that are exiled from heaven. They are masters of deception, and they use mortals, and they've corrupted and invaded their minds and their souls. And when they do that, these entities have actually collected, and they call themselves the Order of the Blackened Denarians. And sometimes simply by touching one of these coins, the fallen has the ability to manipulate the user, possessor, one of the two. And in turn, they will imbue a portion of their essence of the exiled spirit into the person who's touched the coin or possesses it. Okay. Well, that happened to Harry. Okay. Back in Death Masks, Harry saw that one of Michael Carpenter, who's one of his strongest allies, and he's one of these Knights of the Cross. Very Catholic. He's got like 30 children. Okay. He saw that his 7th child was about to pick up this coin out of curiosity. So Harry runs forward and grabs the coin, thus saving the child. And although he moves it into like a bag or a pocket pretty quickly thereafter, a portion of this fallen, Lassiel by name, imbues into Harry, which can be kind of a bad thing. You see, now, among the necessary acts of the church that they're responsible for, the Knights of the Cross are trying to collect these silver to house them with the church to keep them safe from the public. And when one comes under their effects, they're typically tainted, generally to be wiped out. So, although Harry touched one of these in an effort to save one of the knight's sons, he may have to fall under his sword. Now, why even bother to go into all this? This isn't a Death Masks review, it's a proven guilty review. Well, due to the I am sullied, therefore my Knight of God best friend may kill me aspect of their relationship, Harry's been pretty much avoiding his friend Michael Carpenter. Well, like the plague, which for us, the readers, kind of sucks, because he's such a great character to read and watch their interplay. And Michael's wife, Charity Carpenter, this Amazon of a woman with a heavy mama bear aspect, she outright loathes Harry because she's certain that he's going to get her husband killed, or God forbid one of their children get killed. So we haven't gotten that relationship in the books for a few books now. Until now. Seems that Harry gets a call from Michael and Charity's oldest child, their daughter Molly. And Molly's calling him to bail her out of jail. So he's like, yeah, I kind of don't want to get in the middle of this thing. It gets me closer to the family again. I don't want to do this right now. But he eventually Dark Knights his way over there and decides to help her out. Which, surprise, surprise, it's not her that needs bailing out. And by the way, she's now in this out-of-character black makeup and goth clothing outfit, whatever else. It's her pseudo-boyfriend that needs to be bailed out. And you can insert an awkward humor chapter here as he's getting involved with all this. And it kind of segues into another case for Harry, because it turns out that this kid being in jail has something to do with some hostile black magic that seems to be coming down on this guy. So, Harry begins to investigate. And this brings him into that thing that the gatekeeper had warned him about, of saying there's incidents of black magic happening in Chicago. Want you to check it out. So the gatekeeper was warning him, check this out. Boom, he gets right into it. So it turns out there was a convention, a horror con, if you will, for slasher films and horror movie buffs, and somehow these characters are coming alive and killing people. Think Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. Think Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. The Cenobites from Hellraiser. And they're all wreaking havoc in a con filled with fans, and the fans don't realize until it's too late they're not people in costumes, and the knives are real. Oh, by the way, he kind of couldn't use Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and that kind of stuff, so he has to write like adjacent characters. So instead of Chucky from Child's Play, he has Bucky the Killer doll or whatever else. So it's funny to see how they how they kind of dovetail to each other. How like he doesn't have the rights to use those characters, but he found a way to use those characters. And while this whole debacle is going on, it carries us as readers along, and we get to see Harry do some of his investigations, get some evidence of magic that's going down in this horror con where these things are happening. Another attack happens. Get to see him fight some magical enemies alongside of a Chicago police officer named Rollins. And in the ensuing fracas, Rollins actually starts to become something of a believer that magic might actually exist. So that's something that can help out Harry in the future if they both live. And as our heroes try to go through the index of what might be causing his dark magic problems during his investigation, he goes down the road of quite a few possibilities. Which is funny. I mean, if anyone ever watched that medical show House, we're talking about Harry's doing his own little differential diagnosis. Why is the patient here? What can he possibly have that causes the mysterious illness? Harry Dresden does the same thing, and he actually gives you a nice little, well, it could have been this thing, but no, that would have stopped him over there. It could have been that kind of a curse, but nah, the curse does that instead, and of this, and he tries to figure out, and we get to learn more of other things that exist in this world of magic. So we do get to learn about a new spiritual entity / demon in the Dresden Files. We learn of a phobophage. Okay, and there's a version of a phobophage called a fetch. Okay, a fetch feeds on fear and magic. They're shapeshifters, typically allied with the Winter Court. They take a form, they try to scare the bejesus out of you, and then that fear feeds them and makes them more powerful. So, we're better to do this than at a horror con. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here and just get some of the juice of the story. There's plenty to cover in this novel, and my memory not being what it once was, I'll just let you flip through the pages pretty excitedly as you go through this. You get some more magical fights, of course. You get Harry and Rollins actually captured and tortured, both magically and physically. You get some more of the White Court of Vampires in this one too, and you learn that there's actually a subsect within the White Court called House Malvora, who, like the other White Court vampires, doesn't feed on blood, but feeds on essence. So the House Malvora actually feed on lust and fear, kind of like a phobophage. We also get more than a couple run-ins between Harry and Charity Carpenter. And now Harry has this sub-duty. He's trying to get Charity and Molly back together and make family once again, because they've kind of had some falling outs. And it turns out things haven't been right there for some time, and that's why Molly calls Harry to help get the pseudo-boyfriend out instead of calling her parents. And that is where there's an interesting detail in this story that comes full circle. I hate to do this to you, true believers, but that's where I have to don my non-spoiler hat and leave the details of what occurs kind of off to the side and just out in the ether, because the reason of these black magic events and what's going on with the family are linked. And it gets really interesting and almost an eye-opener when you start learning about that. You know, that whole confluence of events that we've been encountering, the black magic problems in Chicago, the phobophages, the winter and summer courts, the carpenters, the execution, all of it. It's all related. But first, we got to take this little small detour, because Molly Carpenter herself is kidnapped by a phobophage and taken to the winter court in the Never Never. So then we get another one of these that was horrible. Then we get one of these Magnificent Seven hero assemblages that comes together and find a way to get to the land of Fae, try to get her back, and survive the attempt. And you're doing this in the power base of the Winter Court, both literally and metaphorically. And to do this, you get Harry Dresden, Karen Murphy of the Chicago Special Investigations Division, the Summer Knight, the Summer Lady, Charity Carpenter, all decked out in medieval armor and weapons, and Thomas Wraith, Harry's half-brother of the White Court of Vampires. Truly a showdown to remember. And, of course, that's not everything. You know, in a very interesting turn of events, we get to live in the world where foreshadowing allows the ending of the book to reflect the beginning of the book. You get a White Council trial meeting, conclave, whatever you want to say it is. You know, they're going to reconvene. And so far, this is one of the most interesting epilogues and a post-climax of these books, I think, to date. One that changes the landscape of the storylines for the foreseeable future, definitely. So that's what I got here. Let me throw up my banner here. If you haven't already, I do throw down my personal recommendations on this series. You know, the good thing about these books, when you read them too, they're not YA. Okay? They're not made for the young adult. There is sex, there's graphic magical deaths, adult themes. Yeah, there's magic and fairies, and sure there's gonna be a dragon at one point in these things, but you know, it's just a fun read. And like I said, at these thicknesses, this one was like 550, I think. Yeah, about 550 pages. Fly through these, absolutely fly through these, or at least I do. So there you have it. You know, I've entertained you now for about 33, 34 minutes. Hopefully it's been great for you. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you here just as soon as I finish reading my next book. All right? You enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye now.